afternoon. This is a reading for an old friend of mine, Louie Joseph Guillemette, Corporal, United States Marine Corps, 1st Marine Division. Louie was born February 1934 in Sanford, Maine. His father's name was George. His mother was Delphine Mazerolle Guillemette. They moved to Somersworth, then to Newmarket when Louie was quite young. They lived at 10 Chapel Street, just one house away from where I lived. We spent many school vacations together, and later together working odd jobs. Louie knew how to find work. He had a knack for it. From farm work to slipping in the shoe shops without the proper paperwork due to our age. I remember one job picking strawberries just down the road from here, New Village. He spoke with the owner and worked out a terrific deal. After 4 o'clock each week, we could pick an extra hour for ourselves. On our way home, we could sell our baskets and pocket the money. When we met the following morning, the first thing came out of Louie's mouth was, "Did you sell your strawberries?" I responded, "Yup." Truth was, I ate almost all I picked. Man, what a bellyache, and I'm careful of strawberries to this day. About 2 years ago, I mentioned it to him, and I thought he'd never stop laughing. There were about 4 of us in a neighborhood bunch, never having any trouble finding our own fun and enjoyment. However, as usually the case, we slipped away from each other a bit as we grew up. Then one day, Louie came to the house, looked at me, and said, "Guess what?" As he stood there proud as a rooster, I joined the Marine Corps. Some word of enthusiasm came from my mouth, but all I could think of was, what the hell did you do that for? I kept that thought to myself because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. As he asked if I wanted to sign up with him, I think I said no 3 times. I said, I'll wait till I get drafted, because I did have a mother that would have ended up alone. Drafted I was, not more than a year later. So Louie headed for Parris Island, I think that's in South Carolina, for basic training. I saw him shortly after his training, and he confided with me that it was so tough that he wondered if he was going to make it. And if Louie said it was tough, then it was without a doubt. When they were just young ones at home, his little brother George had trouble saying Louie. It came out more like Gooey. Everyone calls him that to this day. However, once he became a full-fledged Marine, I never call him Gooey again. Shortly after, Louie headed for Korea. Once I was in the military, we both wrote each other from time to time, but not nearly as enough as we should. I may have been able to share a lot more about his military experience had we kept writing. Louie made it back from Korea all right, except for some shrapnel in his back. The neighborhood bunch made it all right as well. It wasn't until a few years ago that he spoke to me about his tour in Korea, which took place over 50 years ago. This is where he spent a winter up on a hill, either at the Chosin Reservoir or some hill along there. He spoke of being half frozen over and over again, and the feeling that they had been forgotten up there really set in. He said some guys had suffered frostbite to numerous parts of their bodies. Then without a warning, with his next breath, he'd say, "Hell, we made it out all right." Before his discharge from the Marines, he arrived at Camp Pendleton. He spoke about a time when they spent a bunch of Marines that came back from Korea over to Arizona. I think it was. They had nearly a platoon of men all lined up, one row, then 100 yards behind another row, and another row 100 yards behind them. They then witnessed the blast. Each person there that day would receive a complete physical each month after they were discharged. At one point, they learned that they had witnessed an explosion from a nuclear device of some type. I often wondered, when Louie had a physical problem at his age, if it might have been compounded by this episode. Once home, a few years went by, and Louie met Elaine Nichols from Epping. From that point on, he wasn't seeing much of Newmarket. They married and raised 4 children in Epping. It seems to me that every job he had was a backbreaker, from working in a tannery, New England homes, and also the shipyard as a welder, most of the time dockside, outdoors on cranes. He retired from Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in the late 90s. Oh yes, nights after work and weekends, he had his own garbage route in Epping. Louie passed away June 2007. He is buried at St. Joseph Cemetery in Epping. That day there was a complement of Marines at his burial site. He was predeceased by his wife Elaine in 1988, known by his family, friends, and neighbors as a very hard worker, a very devoted family man, a religious man, and not in the least a man proud to be a Marine. Joseph Guillemette, still my best friend. Thank you.